So recording a drum set for under $800. Can you do it? Yes. My name is Mark Slimm, and let's talk about it. So I'm thinking there is a great way to do a 4-mic recording with a drum set. Drum sets can be tricky because they're so big and there's really a bunch of different instruments all being played by one person, but you can do it with 4 mics pretty easily. So overhead mics are really important because that's what's going to be capturing like a majority of the kit for us. Now these AKG 451s are great microphones and I prefer to use these, but these are like $1,000. So the next best thing are these Rode NT5s. They're like $450-ish, depending on where you look, and they are great microphones for the price. Now the kick and the snare, I'm just going to say SM57. I think a lot of people have SM57s. They're the industry standard, and honestly, you can't go wrong with 2 microphones, with 2 SM57s. I mean, they're great. You can use them on anything. Okay, so hardware. It's really important that we get some decent mic stands. Unfortunately, good mic stands are expensive. I found these on-stage microphones stands, and they're great. They're only like $30, but they don't like jiggle out of place, and they won't drift over time and like slide down like most cheap stands do. Another thing is this stereo bar. So I found this stereo bar on Musician's Friends. It's $20. It's by Onstage, and it looks kind of cheap. Also, I found these XLRs. They're 25 feet long, and we need 4 of them for our 4 mics. Our total on for 11 items on Musician's Friends comes out to $776.68. Let's talk about mic techniques. So for overheads, there's a bunch of different techniques we can use. We can use like a space pair. We can use a near coincidence. If you have the right mics, you could do an SM type effect. But I think the best is the XY pattern, or the XY setup. Basically what we do is if my hands are the microphone diaphragms, you just set them up like this, in this kind of cross configuration. If you've ever seen one of those handheld microphones like a Zoom or a Tascam, you've definitely seen XY. So the overheads will pick up a majority of the drum kit. It'll give you a nice stereo image, especially with this XY pattern, and you don't have to worry about phasing too much. You just got it all right here, and you can move it around the kit. Now the question is, where do you set them? The typical place would probably be about center of the drum set, right about where the end of the shell of the kick is. That'll give you a really good stereo image. The only thing is, the snare drum will be a little offset. Now that's totally fine, and that's kind of how a drum set sounds, especially if you're playing it. The snare drum is just a little bit off. But for people who can't stand that, you can easily just put the microphones right over the snare, and that will center the whole kit around the snare. So, how to mic the snare drum. So, usually if we take the drum and we take the microphone, if you place the microphone just right in the center of the head of the snare drum, right where the player is hitting the drum with the stick, you'll get a really overall nice sound. So now the kick drum. The best way to figure out where to put the mic on the kick drum is to really have your drummer play the kick drum kind of soft, very softly, and you kind of put your ear in front of it and you kind of listen to where the best tone is on the kick drum. Usually the best tone you can get is where the beater is, where that beater hits on the resonant side. So what I like to do when we're setting the gain is I like to have the drummer just start playing, and I'll get the levels, and I like the levels to sit around -12. That way there's plenty of headroom, and then I just adjust all the mics so they all hit around -12. And then one of the things I like to do to just kind of make sure I got a really good stereo image is to have the drummer do a press roll or rolls on the snare, and I just evaluate my image and my gain for the overheads by doing that. So now that we got the drums all set up and gained and mics all in the right place, let's have a listen. So this is with no processing at all, no compression, no reverb or anything. All I did was just adjust the levels. So let's take a listen. So something I didn't mention was the height of the overheads. That's pretty important. That affects kind of a lot of stuff. It affects stereo, and it affects the room response, how much of the room is getting in there. And basically what that is the farther the microphones are away, especially in the XY pattern, we will get a narrower stereo image, and then the closer we get it, the wider that image will get. So we can see from this example that the closer it is, you see it's pretty wide. He's doing these fills, and we can kind of hear it. And then as I back it away, the image gets narrower and narrower. So now let's listen to what these drums sound like processed. And now since this is a cheap build, I'm just going to be using the default Logic plugins, which a lot of you should have. I just used the basic compressor. I used a basic EQ. I also used like the design reverb designer, or whatever it's called. These things I have not used in a while. But you see, if we kind of listen to the sound right here. So with enough practice, you can get a lot of good sounds with this 4-mic technique. You can start to develop your favorite mic positions on the snare and on the kick, and maybe you can even start using a spaced pair or maybe a near coincidence and really bring this up to the next level. So thanks for watching. If you learned something, please hit the like button. Until next time, thanks for watching.